在美国去哪都要小费吗？富人穷人都得给吗？听听美国人是怎么说的。大家好，我是young。我分享的视频中出现过很多时候，老公在付小费的时候会付出30%、40%。那很多网友问到很多关于这个小费的问题。那今天呢，让老公呢先回答一些网友的问题。
Hey， 大家好，我是江恩。Today, we have a little topic that is probably something that Chinese are not really familiar with. They may know about it when you go to a restaurant or a place for drinks. Do you tip? And what is a tip?
什么是小费？
So there's actually, it's an acronym, TIPS, which means to ensure prompt service. So it is originally created to show your server that you appreciate their good service and you rate their service by how much you give them.
美国人一般给多少小费？
Now, there is a standard that everybody normally uses, and it's 15% of the bill before tax. So if you liked your server a lot, and you want to show them that, you could give 18%, 20%, or higher. So tipping it's not mandatory, but it's expected. And if you give no tip or a low tip, you can expect to hear something from the server, but they really can't enforce anything. It's not a law. So technically, you don't have to tip, but you certainly would not be welcome back in that place again.
为啥美国人愿意给小费？
For me, my experience with tipping might be a little bit different than other Western people because when I was younger, I worked in a bar serving drinks where it was tip-based. So I was paid very minimum hourly because I would generate tips with all of the people that would order their drinks through the night in a crowded sports bar that my cousin Tom owns still. And so I worked there when he first opened up, and I noticed that tipping certainly was reflected upon your service. And if you were too busy to get to somebody quickly, they might not give you a very good tip. If the place was crowded enough, then the biggest tip showing in their hand got the drink first. So there are different levels of tipping and where you are. Most of it takes place in restaurants, but I worked in a sports bar, a pub. It's not really common in China if they have it all. So all of the sports games are on TVs in there. And people would come in, especially on Sunday. American football is very popular. And they would eat and drink as well. So sometimes 2 meals. They would have lunch and an early dinner for the evening games. And that would get their bill up there. So if the bill is more money, then the percentage of that, even the minimum of 15%, becomes a lot more, obviously. You do the math. But it can become even more than that if you give them great service.
作为服务生，怎样挣更多的小费呢？
You show them that, one, you notice them when they walked in. And if you know them, make sure that you just have that connection with your eyes, that you recognize them, and you'll be there in a moment. If you don't know them, you just make the eye contact and give a nod, or if you can, say, I'll be with you as soon as I can. It seems that many people working in the industry don't really have that awareness around them. I always say to my wife that you either have it or you don't in that industry. And I say that because, again, it's about that awareness of your surroundings. It's an interesting industry when it comes to tips. And often, if there's more than one bartender behind the bar, your regulars, the people that you know or that you've served before, will choose you if they think that the service was better with one bartender than the other. Then, so, I receive tips way beyond 15%. I mean, and you have to remember, people are drinking alcohol, and some of them get rather generous when they're drinking, and they can tip 20, 30, 40, 50% easily. So people working in that industry, of course, they rely on the tips, but they can make a lot of money. And again, it's reflected on how good your service is. Now, if you're not a good server, you're not going to be able to get a job in a good place, maybe a lower level type place. But the very expensive restaurants, if you're good and you go work at a high-end restaurant, then you can really make a lot of money doing it.
在给小费的时候，有钱人给的多，穷人给的少。
So people have a misconception about how good tippers are and who is a good tipper and who is not. You would think that people with a lot of money, rich people, they have more money to give, right? So that they would tip better than people who don't have as much money. Well, as I said, that is a misconception, and they end up being the worst tippers. The richer they are, the worse they are at tipping. Hey, 大家好，我是young. Again, before we were talking about tips, and I was in the middle of it, and we had some technical difficulties. Anyway, I just wanted to finish what I was talking about, a couple points that I was making.
到底什么样的美国人会给最高的小费呢？
You know, it's really the best tippers turn out to be the blue collar workers, the people that are hardworking, the physical labor. They don't have a lot of money, middle class. They are generally the best tippers. So I consider myself more on the generous side with tipping because I worked for tips. However, I'm very critical about people in the service industry that don't deserve a good tip. So I appreciate very good service, and I really do not appreciate a bad service. There are people that go out and strictly it's 15%. There are many people that it's just 15% across the board. And so if you come here, remember it's 15% and you don't have to give more than that. It's not a law, but you really should do it. Again, you would not be welcome back in an establishment that you did not tip at all or even under tipped. 10% it's not acceptable. It's really people who work in industry are not paid a lot hourly. So it's all about the percentage of tips that they get. So that is, I guess, my lesson in tipping or my explanation of it, whatever you choose to say. So remember, TIPS, the acronym, right? What's it stand for? To ensure prompt service. Prompt means timely. That was the most important thing when the acronym was created, that you got your server there in time, you got your menu, you got your food. And then when you wanted to leave, you had your bill. You didn't have to look for the person. They're right there. So that's prompt is what they're expressing there. So, okay, tips. Later.